Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff and Happy New Year's from all of us here at Tabletop Toolbox, and welcome to the 43rd episode of the Weekly Ratchet. You've shared with me your gaming resolutions for the new year. I'm going to share some of mine and talk about this massive stack of games that we've played here in the past week right here on the Weekly Ratchet. Hang on, Daniel's texting me. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. Listen, as always, I hope you've had a fantastic week of playing games with family and or friends, but above all, I hope that your 2025 is off to a good start. We have had a great, relaxing week here in Virginia. Happy New Year from all of us here in Virginia. And speaking of which, you should see the weather that we are enjoying outside right now. That's right, a winter wonderland has descended upon central Virginia. The snow started last night, and we should get just a little bit more here during the day, but this will melt off pretty quick. Here in Central Virginia, we maybe get 1 or 2 snow days a year, and speaking of which, my daughter's probably out playing in it right now. You may catch a little bit of sound through the microphones. I certainly was not going to tell her not to go out and have some fun before all this stuff melts off, because I don't plan on shoveling it. It'll just go away on its own. Anyways, actually no new games have come in here this week. I do have a couple packages coming in this week, so there'll hopefully be some new stuff to chat about next week. But we have spent this past week just relaxing here at home. We have played a ton of games, 14 games that we have played here in the past week, and I'm looking forward to sharing those. And since I don't want to waste any time, let's go ahead and get the question of the week. Here we go into question of the week. Last week at the end of 2024, I asked you to share with me your gaming resolutions for 2025. Got a few that were sort of along the norm, but also a few unique ones. Let me go ahead and kick things off with Penny, who said she'd love to pick a few strategy games and play them more often so she can understand them better, as most games get played 1 or 2 times and then get left behind. You know, Penny, this is so on point. This makes a lot of sense to me, as even over this past week looking at, what do we want to play? What do we want to play? And I thought there were so many games that I don't even remember how to play, even though I know that I really enjoyed them. And I know that I'm not very good at them, and you're absolutely right. With so many games coming in, and so much of the cult of the new, which I know that I'm a victim of, I do wish that I could pick a few games. SETI would be one that I would love to get to know really, really well, as is, say, Ironwood. That would also be a really, really fun game, and I just don't know that I'm going to get that many plays of them. As a reviewer, I always have stuff coming in, but obviously not everyone has that problem. So I really hope that you can do that. I'd love to know what games you get more into. Let me know. Up next is Brandon Graham, who has commented several times here on the Ratchet, but never in time for filming. So I'm going to give him the first time poster confetti. He wrote that he started a meetup group with a theme of pairing an event with a game, like touring a vineyard and then playing viticulture. The group has tons of members, but no events have ever been planned. Maybe 2025 is the year. Hey, Brandon, I really hope, I think that you should make that happen. That sounds really awesome, and I definitely want to know when the Terraforming Mars event is planned. Seriously, though, good luck on that. Jeremy Brooks said that he wants to stay home and get more games played, if for nothing else than to give his liver a break. He said he misses the pandemic era and being able to play games most nights of the week. Yeah, I can certainly understand that, and it has been so exciting here this past month when my wife has said, hey, let's just stay home and play some games and just kind of get to enjoy, being at home and doing things together. I certainly hope that you can pull that off as well. Wayne Kruger said he wants to get back to attending game day events more regularly. He wants to make more time in 2025 to play games and enjoy the hobby again. And you're going to see this theme in a couple other answers coming up here in this segment. A lot of folks who just want to set aside some more time to play games this year, and I hope that all of us can pull that off. Josh Knight said he needs to reconnect with his local friend for some more gaming as well, that with a toddler in the house, there just isn't time, energy, or ambition for gaming with his wife, so he too wants to motivate himself to get out and play games with friends. Again, more of us wanting to have more time to engage in this hobby, so I wish you luck. Teshera said he wants to aim to play fewer new games in 2025. He said they played 37 new games in 2024, and he wants to drop that to about 30 this year to save money on games and to make sure that they are playing what they already have. And that's kind of a more unique goal, right? And I think that's an interesting one to, make sure that the games that you have sitting on the shelf are getting some attention, and kind of going back to Penny's comment, to make sure that, you remember how to play them, to be able to engage with them a little better, to know them a little better, to be better at playing them. I think it's a very noble goal. Ty McDonald of The Last Command Game, who is responding to his first question of the week, said he wants to try harder to get more groups together. He wants to try some legacy games like Slay the Spire and Velocity Vanguard, which hopefully will be delivering to backers soon. You had mentioned you'd played it at PAX Unplugged. I do remember seeing that at PAX Unplugged. I probably have a photo buried in my phone somewhere. I didn't know that it was a legacy game, and I want to say that was coming out or was out around the time of, say, Voidfall or Fractal, and that might be why I just didn't throw my hat in the ring on that one. But it does look neat, and I never turned down a space game, and maybe, as you said, we can get a chance to play that sometime here in the future. Bored Halfling wants to cut his list of unplayed games in half, which Bored Halfling cutting his boards in half sounds a little nail on the head, doesn't it? But hey, I wish you luck on that one. We have gotten through a bunch of unplayed games as well this week. I'm looking forward to sharing those experiences, and I hope that you can do the same as well. My buddy Jeff Foxwell, aka EctoFox, who's posting for the first time, said that his New Year's resolution is to work harder to get his game published. He wants to attend more conventions and make more connections in hopes of making that happen. Jeff, I still haven't played that game. I know it's a hidden movement game, which I don't have a lot of experience with those kinds of games. And I know you told me the theme, and I apologize. I'm blanking on it at the moment. But I would love to get more chances for you and I to play some stuff together. As I mentioned, Jeff lives here in the area. We were going to try and get together maybe about 2 weeks ago, but he wasn't feeling well. I hope you're feeling better. And yeah, I hope that we can get together and play some stuff. I would love to check out that game. We talked about Dinogenics, and I just kind of have a feeling that you and I have some common gaming interests. So one of my resolutions is to get to link up with you a little bit more and play some games. Let's do that. Omar Hernandez said his goal is to, and I quote, sack up and call some games. That he's overloaded and games are all over the place at this point. Yeah, you can probably see over my shoulder that this table behind me has kind of become a staging ground as we were playing so many games in the past week that I just kept piling them up on that table and taking new ones out, and now I am just swimming in games. The room is a mess. I need to clean up, but I do also need to call some stuff. In fact, we have another one of those math trades coming up here pretty soon, and I'm hoping I can get rid of some stuff, as I know the feeling. SS Brew Crew 3151, a first-time poster, said his resolution is to play all his unplayed games before he buys a new game. Oh man, that is pretty ambitious. I could never make that kind of a promise, and I think maybe you mentioned that you didn't pull this off last year either, but yes, there's a lot of comments here about trying to get unplayed games off that unplayed games list. So I certainly wish you the best of luck, and thanks for joining us here on the channel. Yukon Zach said he wants to join or start a new gaming group in 2025. He recently relocated to Fort Myers, Florida, and while he attends the Big Game Bash with Joey Evans of the Dice Tower, he wants to be part of something more than just a few times a year. And we've talked about that in previous episodes, right? About what it takes to meet new groups or join new groups or start new groups and just be able to play more games. Again, a common theme we're seeing here this year is people wanting to play more stuff. I did reach out to my sister. She doesn't know anyone in Fort Myers. Unfortunately, I can't help you out with that one, but I do know that, there's always something out there, and I hope that you're able to locate a group and find something that will work for you. Ryan Combs said he'd like to get rid of games they never play and only buy games that they can't live without. Again, more of this wanting to call games, which makes a lot of sense, kind of making room for maybe new stuff or just trying to play the stuff that you know you're really going to like. That all makes sense. The biggest challenge with that, I think, is that sometimes you buy games that you're really looking forward to and then they just end up not being that good. So there's always that to kind of work around. But I wish you luck on that one. And lastly, this wasn't question of the week related, but Sean Turney asked where those rock hard 1977 upgrades came from. And I listed the Etsy sellers in the comments of episode number 42. So if you're also looking for those components, you can go and check those. I listed the name of the sellers and kind of the item description. So hopefully you can find those. And if you still have problems, let me know and I'll try and get you connected with those. This year, my New Year's resolution, which I think you're going to enjoy, is that I want to start putting out more content. I have talked so many times over the past year of this show that I want to do more stuff. I've asked you what I should do, and I still haven't done it. And I know that one of my biggest problems is scheduling and planning, which is funny because that's what I do for a living. And so what I'm going to try and do is prepare more of an actual schedule. I'm going to try and lay out the games that I want to produce content for on a weekly basis. I'm going to try and do a review maybe every 2 weeks. I don't want to push myself too hard. I also don't want to make this work, right? But I want to try and get a review out every 2 weeks or so. I'm going to alternate between this channel and the Dice Tower, as some of the games you're actually about to hear about are games that they provided to me for reviews. And so obviously, to be fair, I need to put those out on their channel. I'm also going to try and work on a system here with this channel, with this show, combination that you guys will get to tell me the games that you want to see content of. If there's a game that you're particularly interested in, I'm going to use either a poll system. I think I could do polls on YouTube. I might do something out on the Facebook page, maybe start a group. I'm not really sure. I haven't fully fleshed out this idea yet, but you're going to see it soon because I actually, of this list of games that you're about to hear about, I want you to be able to tell me which ones you want to hear more of. Again, if they're Dice Tower games, I'm going to have to do videos for them in the Dice Tower. I should. It's just fair. But some of the Kickstarter stuff that I'm getting, maybe some review copies of games that I get, if there's something that you particularly want to see, I'm going to make it so that you can vote for the games that you want to see more of. And then I'm probably going to pick, do I want to do a worst unboxing video? Do I want to do a full review? So on and so forth. I do think you're going to see, and I, I say this because I need to, you're going to probably see a little less of the green screen work and the crazy antics and just all the over-the-top production that I do because it just takes too long. And that's what makes these videos, that's what makes me just not produce content. It really kind of hurts me. And it's my own fault because I have these ambitious goals and I think, oh, it'd be cool if I did this. But it's going to take me forever, so I'll think of something else. And then I never do. I get stuck on that idea. And maybe eventually I make it happen, but it just takes weeks and weeks and weeks. I've had a review idea for the Joyride game in my head for weeks. And that video could be done. It could be up. People could be watching it. Because I have this crazy idea for an intro scene, I've just never done it. I do want to do it. I've even done some filming work for it. I just need to get it done. Anyways, that's the idea, is I'm going to try and finally make good on my promise of making some more content, and I want you guys to be a part of deciding which content to focus on. So keep an eye out for that. More of that coming soon, and I'll mention the next questions of the week towards the end of this episode. Let me go ahead and get to this list of recently played games. All right, 14 games to get through. I've got to get through these kind of quick in the interest of time and attention and all that kind of stuff, so I'm going to try and blitz through these. I also did take a lot of photos, so I should have lots of stuff that I can kind of show you of all these games. Let me go ahead and kick things off. Up first, we did play Dwarf Romantic. In fact, I mentioned at the end of the last episode I was hoping to play this that night, and we did. In fact, we've played this twice. This is a tile-laying game, kind of like Carcassonne, in that you're just trying to put tiles out to complete sort of challenges. There are regular tiles that will show a variety of sort of environments on it, like fields, neighborhoods, forest, train tracks, and river. And your general tiles that you put out, and then there are these task tiles, which kind of show a speech bubble. And when you play a task tile, which you must always have 3 present on the board, you then reveal a little number token, and that shows you how many tiles you need to connect to that tile of that particular environment. So if it's a river tile and it says 3, then you have to have 3 river tiles, and that tile has to be one of them, and then you score that objective. It becomes 3 points, which the number is based on, the points are based on the number on the tile. And then later on, you may reveal a 5 task tile, which you can connect to that 3 and build to it into a 5, and then score 5 points. And that's basically it. That's the whole game. And then there's this idea that you get your score at the end of each game, and your score relates to a number of little bubbles that you can fill in on this separate chart, and you're filling in these bubbles on these different pathways, and that unlocks additional content, gives you milestones, all kinds of other things that you're working towards, which eventually lets you get into higher and higher and higher scores. So our very first game, we kind of struggled to hit 109 points. In our second game, we scored something like 150, although I did realize I had a little scoring criteria wrong. I was doing something incorrectly and giving us a little extra points that we should have gotten. Anyways, it's a fun game. It's a pretty game. It's very, 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 very lightweight. And the only thing with this is that it's cooperative, but there's almost no cooperative aspect really to it. You're not working together on anything except for just deciding as a group where a tile should go, which makes this game very, very open to alpha gaming. No, you need to put that there. No, that needs to go over here. In which case, why are you playing with other people? Just play it by yourself, which you can very, very easily do. So I don't dislike it, but I don't really even consider this to be as much of a game as just an experience, something that you kind of do casually, very, very relaxing, a decent puzzle, but you don't really need other people to play this. It would probably work perfectly fine as a solo experience. Again, not really a game, but we have had fun with it, and we plan to continue getting through it. Dwarf Romantic. Up next, we played, and this is on the floor. Someone was asking about this in the last episode. This is Ascending Empires. This is a dexterity-based 4X game, and it's built as a 4X game. It's not a 4X game, but I'll get into that. So this has a large neoprene mat with these wooden discs that you put into these little holes all across the mat, and those represent planets. Each planet has a ring around it for an orbit, and you're basically flicking your little ships around, and when you get within the orbit of a planet, you can then land on that planet and start building colonies and outposts, research centers and such. There is sort of it's not really a tech tree, but there is technology that you can research based on the planets that you control. So if you land on a red planet, you can advance on the red research track. If you land on a green planet, the green research track, etc. We played, of course, a 2-player game of this, which adds these little robots that sit sort of towards the center of the galaxy, and you can attack them, which then pushes them out to other planets. And eventually the game has a couple of endgame triggers, but the one that we ran into was that we attacked a robot, the robot would go to jump to another planet, and all the planets were occupied either by robots already or by my wife and I, the players. And so when there is nowhere for the robots to go, when all the planets are explored or occupied or whatever, that triggers the end game. A 4X game, and I talked about this with Voidfall, right? There's exterminate, exploit, expand, and I always forget the other one. Explore, exterminate, expand, and exploit. Yeah, I think that's it. So exploration is you don't know what the planets are until you get within their orbit, and you can flip them over and find out what kind of a planet it is. Sure, that's exploration. There is extermination, that you can fight other players. You can, of course, fight these robots. And also in the 2-player game, and there's a variant in the game that you can use it at higher player counts, there are these kind of neutral warships that show up, and you can attack them for some extra points. And so there's extermination, sure, just fine. The expansion, absolutely, as you're exploring these new planets and then colonizing them, building your outposts, you sort of expand your influence, so that's there. But the exploit aspect is one where usually your culture, the cities that you control, the planets you control, whatever the game is going to give you resources. And there's really no resource in this game except for energy, which you get when you build new outposts and cities. Or actually, it's the cities and the star bases will give you energy, and you can use this energy on your turn to possibly boost the action that you're taking. So there's 4 actions in the game: moving, building, deploying new ships or crew, and then there's one other, and I can't remember what it is at the top of my head. But the thing that was kind of weird with it was that when you're deploying new troops, you can deploy them wherever you have a city or an outpost. So as you're expanding across this galaxy, you can get new troops out. But you can only deploy new ships at this sort of warp gate where you start off the game. And there's nothing you could do at that warp gate except for deploy new ships. You can't just deploy ships, even where you have a star base in orbit around a planet, you can't just deploy new ships there. And I thought that was kind of odd. You have to first deploy troops and then do a move action, and you can launch those troops into ships, which means if you were trying to use those ships, you actually need 2 ships to be able to convert them into a star base. And so it becomes a very lengthy process. If you want to build a star base, you have to first move to the planet, land on the planet, then build a city or outpost, then deploy new troops, then launch them into ships, and then finally build it into a starbase. And that's kind of how the whole game felt. The whole game felt like, okay, I want to get this thing done. It's going to take me forever to get it done. It's going to take me 4, 5, 6 turns to do this. And depending on what other players are doing, you can find yourself just kind of getting left behind as people are expanding all over the galaxy, and you're just trying to build a star base. And so that part was kind of annoying. I was also a little surprised. There's 4 different tech trees or tech sort of paths that you can build up in, and of course you have to have one planet of the color for every level of that tech you want to expand into. There's 4 levels of tech, and there's only 4 planets of that color in the entire game. So if you're playing a 4-player game, I do think you might get more planets out. Maybe there's 2 of each color then, or 8 of each color, sorry. But it takes so long to explore that stuff, and then you're getting this technology, and the technology we found towards the end of the game, we never even used it. One may give you you get the refresh in energy when you build an outpost. Well, I only built 2 outposts in the whole game, right? And then I built them in the cities and left them behind. And so towards the end of the game, we're kind of sitting there chatting about it. And my wife goes, well, you have all that tech. Did you ever use it? And I was like, actually, no, I really didn't. And the only thing that's really dexterity based is flicking the ships around. And then there's this weird thing that if you hit a ship with your ship, both ships get destroyed. And so if you're literally trying to move like a fleet across space to maybe attack an opponent, you've got to be really, really careful where you're flicking your discs, because if you hit your own ship, by the rules, you wipe out your entire fleet. And so it was kind of like, it was a neat concept, but it really just wasn't much of a game. There just wasn't much there. We didn't really feel very immersed in this. It kind of ended before we realized it. The whole thing of trying to hunt and peck, trying to find the planets that you want to find, to research the tech that you want to research, was just kind of a little annoying, to be honest with you. And it just took so long to progress through the game. I don't know that this is going to get a lot more playtime. I'm sure we'll check it out one more time. There is also a solo variant, which I don't know how the heck you do solo with a dexterity game, but I'm curious to check it out. Not sure where I stand on this one. Nice production, easy to teach, but just not a whole lot of game there. Ascending, empires. All right, let me keep moving. Up next was Project Gaia, not to be confused with Gaia Project. This is a very small, and I say very small in that it's not well known. And I'm sorry, I put the back of the lid of the box on backwards. This is from Game Storm Studio, designed by Stephen Baker. This was provided by the Dice Tower. This is a cooperative game where players are trying to stop a man-made AI from destroying mankind. Where did they ever get that idea from? Who knows? This was a weird one because there are like 12 characters in the game, and each player has to represent a number of characters. And so in a 2-player game, we had to both control 6 characters, which wasn't that big of a deal. There's not like a complicated player board or anything. You just have a skills card and a character card. And then as you're collecting these action cards and or these ship system cards, you kind of have to keep them assigned to each character. But each character has to activate before any character can activate a second time. And Gaia, your AI, is activating on each turn. So basically, you have to go through 12 turns between your 2 players, with Gaia taking 12 turns before any one of your characters can move again. And if your characters start to die off, which can happen very easily in this game, they still have to activate. You still have to go through all 12 turns before a character can move again. And so at the beginning of the game, you've got Earth, you've got Mars and the Moon, and then this Gaia space station, and you start off all on Earth, and you kind of have to go and collect these code words. You have to find out which 3 code words aren't. There's 12 code words. You have to figure out which 9 are not the proper code. So basically, when you're down to 3 codes left to reveal, you have figured out how to reboot the Gaia project and stop its destruction of Earth, right? Pretty simple. You start off on Earth, and there's a couple of code words right there on Earth. You can trigger those pretty quickly. And then you have to board these ships. You have to do these space runs to get to Mars and the Moon and the space station. But at Mars and the Moon, there's only 1 or 2 clue words. And you got to go through a shitload of cards to get to that celestial body. And then once you're there, you have to either get back on the ship and go through another ton of these mission objectives to get to the next location. Well, after the first run, especially to Mars, our ship was hanging together by a thread. I got to the Moon with only 1 person left alive. And so there's no way that you could survive another trip to get anywhere else in this game. So if at any point you lose one of these ships, you're almost completely screwed in trying to get your mission done. Now, we got really, really, really lucky. We had a lot of good fortune with this game. We didn't really have any problems, and to us it felt very easy, except for that towards the end of the game, you've got a ship stuck on the moon. You've got a ship stuck on Mars. We did have a ship with almost a full crew on the space station who were trying to run around and get these last couple of clues. No one else could really do anything. We didn't kill anybody, but they were just stuck where they were sitting. And so it was, okay, my turn. Well, I'm going to move S. Baker, whoever the heck that is. But, well, he's stuck on the ship, and the ship ain't going anywhere, so I would just draw a card and I'm done. And so it was really just a matter of running out the clock and trying to make sure that we can get these code words solved before Gaia draws the last card. And luckily we pulled it off. But I could see this being a miserable experience for people. And I could just, I don't know. I have no real ambition to play this thing again. I will say that there's a lot of one-score votes out on BGG because, oh, they stole the name of Gaia Project, and that's really lame, and so they've given it bad scores. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, folks. The word Gaia goes back to like the early 1800s. The author, Ayn Rand, wrote a book all about Gaia. There's a whole concept of who Gaia is or what Gaia is with the Earth and all kinds of stuff. So Project Gaia didn't steal the name of Gaia any more than Gaia Project did. So don't rate it 1 because of its name. Rate it 1 because it's kind of a crappy game. All right? That was Gaia Project. It was from the Dice Tower, so I'll probably be putting together a review of that out there. Up next, we played Bites. Bites is this really, really simple game where you have this path of food and you have these ant tokens, and on your turn you simply move an ant to the food token that it wants. So if you have the green ant, it wants to go to green peppers, and then you take the food before or after where that ant is sitting. So you don't take the food you land on, you take the food in front of or behind where that ant is sitting. But you don't know what any of the food is worth until those ants start to reach the ant hill, and the first ant to reach there, the ant hill, goes on one of these levels of the anthill, and there's a card that will tell you if they go to the highest level or the lowest level first. The lowest level is a 0 score, the highest level is a 5 score or a 4 score. I think it's a 4. And so in our case, it was you go the lowest first. And so I think it was the toast. I think I made sure that the bread ant was the first to get to the anthill because my wife had a ton of bread tiles, and that made them all worth 0 points. And she was like, thanks, hon. The last ant to arrive, I think, was the apple ant, the red ant. And we all had a couple apples, and so those became worth 4 points. But every game of this is very, very different because you draw a bunch of cards at the beginning of the game that tells you what the chocolate does. It tells you how the wine scores. It tells you, again, if you start at the bottom or the top of the anthill, and there's one other, and I don't remember what it is. And it was very, very simple in that sense. It was just, okay, we're just moving ants and collecting food. The only thing that was a little bit of a problem in this was that as we were moving these ants and kind of collecting random food tiles, it became very difficult to see where our path was. It became a little difficult to tell, well, am I on this row? Am I going this way? Am I going that way? I can't really tell. We had to kind of keep collapsing the food to make it a little bit more evident where we were in the path. That wasn't a big deal. Now, part of it that was funny was that my wife collected a ton of the wine tokens, which actually scored her a ton of points, and she won the game. And I just kept joking about her being a booze hound and winning with all the wine. But it was fun. I would definitely love to check this out some more. I do have the expansion in here. We did not try it. And I have completely misplaced my promo token, which has a rainbow-colored ant. I don't know what it does. I'm still hoping I can find it. Torn this room apart looking for it. Hopefully that will turn up. That was Bites. Up next, we played Star Trek Panic. This is from USAopoly. I believe that is correct. Yes, USAopoly. I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. This is one that I was really excited to get my hands on. Castle Panic is one of sort of a line of these Panic games. I believe the first was Castle Panic, and I think there's another one that my friends from the Meeple Society were mentioning, and I can't remember what it was called. There's also a Kids Castle Panic, and this is somewhere in that lineup. Now, this game is out of print, and it will not be printed again because USAopoly lost the license rights to Star Trek. And that's fine because this game was crap. We did not like this game at all. The idea of this is that it is a tower defense game, and in Castle Panic you had just enemies that were coming towards your castle. You had to fend them off. Well, in this game you're a starship in space, and so you still have this central hexagon where the ship sits, and the ship is sort of divided up into 6 quadrants or 6 areas. And then you also have shield tiles facing each of the 6 sides of this hexagon. And you have 3 hexagonal rings that go out from that central space. And you're bringing enemies in and all kinds of stuff that comes in from the edges of the space. But you can actually turn the Enterprise to face different sections. You can even move in the direction basically towards 2 of these hexagonal edges, and everything that's in front of you sort of comes towards you, but everything else just stays still. That's kind of how they tackled movement in this game. And all that was fine. I didn't have any problem with that whatsoever. You're drawing all these cards. The cards may let you do various things, but they're mostly going to be firing off weapons, and they're going to tell you which section, either fore or aft or your sides, you can fire these weapons at. And so you may have cards that do a lot of front damage, but you're not facing anything, so you can turn the Enterprise and then hopefully still shoot at something, but your movement is very limited. You can't just spin wherever you want to go. And we had a solar storm that came out that spun us a 180, and I was trying to go this direction to get to a star base that had come out, which was actually a benefit. And if you could dock with it, you could repair your ship a whole bunch and do a bunch of other stuff. And this game would not let me get to this star base. Most annoyingly, though, is that you have these missions. You have to get 5 missions done and then wipe all the threats off the board to win the game. We drew our first mission card. Now, it tells you if it's your first game, use this mission. We don't do that. We're professionals, right? So I just randomly drew a mission. And I had to have picked the hardest damn mission in the game because we had to contribute 6 cards, 2 in command, 2 in science, 2 in engineering. And some of these cards are multi-use, right? So you can play it for its weapon effect or whatever it does, or you can just spend it to contribute towards a mission. We got to 2 science very quickly. We got to 2 engineering very quickly. I had 1 card with a command ability that I spent to do something else, to shoot at somebody. And so we needed to draw 2 more command cards. And we had 6 turns to get this done in, or the game completely, we just fail. It's not even just you fail the mission. No, you lose the entire game. And on my wife's turn, she draws her hand of cards. She goes, okay, well, I can shoot here. I was like, well, it doesn't matter. Did you get 2 yellow cards? Oh, no, I didn't. Well, then we lost the mission. We just lost the mission because literally we could not draw enough cards from the deck to complete the mission. There was nothing we could have done about it. Yeah, I spent the 1, but we never even got another one. It's not even like I used it for the wrong thing. We still could never have gotten the mission done. Now, we kind of cheated. It's okay, we'll just play your turn and we'll just skip the mission timer for 1 more round. And I happened to draw 2 yellow cards and we finished the mission. And then the next mission said, oh, you can't move the ship at all until you clear out this mission. And guess what? You need another 2 yellow command cards and another 4 blue cards or something. And same thing, like at that point, we just went through the deck. We're like, look, we've got to go 8 more turns before we can even finish this mission and move the ship again. And by then, these threats are going to just destroy us. And I literally said, you know what? That's enough. Let's just go play something else. So we threw in the towel on this one. It's unfortunately, this copy is a little beat up, which is too bad because it came from Noble Knight and it was listed as, I think, very good condition. It is not in very good condition, but I will probably be parting ways with this because we did not have fun with it at all. Star Trek Panic. Okay, moving on. I got our first play-in of Meadow Adventure Book. I was very, very excited to play this. We actually played it twice. Now, I'm not going to go into length about the game itself. If you want to know more, if you don't know anything about Meadow and you want to see more about it, go and check out my review of the Meadow Downstream expansion out on the Dice Tower channel, where I did also talk about the base game and how it plays and basically kind of gave a recap of the rules. So I'm going to skip all over that in the interest of time. This thing has 6 mini games in it, and you can only play one at a time, and it cannot be used with the Downstream expansion. You can still watch that video because I talk about the base game. And it also eliminates the campfire board from the base game, and you would visit the campfire board to score some extra points based on symbols that you have present in your meadow. I've been reading the rules for this, all right? I've read through the rules of 4 of the 6 expansions. The first one sounded great, which is the first one my wife and I played. It is, you're supposed to be going on a hike, and you're playing the game just like normal. You're putting out meadow cards in front of you. You're trying to kind of build this ecosystem, whatever. And then at certain points, there's a row or a column, or 2 rows or 2 columns, of the board where you're drafting these cards from will have a little token added into them at the beginning of each round. You roll a die and see where it moves. And there's going to be a sunny path and a stormy path or rainy path. And if you take a card from either of those paths, you kind of move up this track on this new adventure book sideboard. And then when you reach the bottom of that track, you can draw a specialty card from that side book, from the adventure book, and it goes in your hand. And then it actually adds an element to the path tokens, the sort of landscape cards that you're also placing into your meadow from the base game. You can add a weather tile or weather card to that event. So you can kind of say, hey, I went on this walk and I recovered this neat thing and it was kind of rainy. Like it just adds a very little bit of flair to the game. And there's some extra score and criteria things you can do, and it's all fine. Great. Had a lot of fun with it. Beat my wife by like 9 points, and we had a lot of fun. Just a nice, chilled, relaxing game. The next chapter is called Bridges. And you get this token in front of you that has these 4 challenges on it. And the challenge is that you have to put this bridge tile in the middle of your meadow. You can play cards to its left, play cards to its right, but they're static, right? They don't ever get moved around. And that tile represents a bridge bridging these 2 play areas in front of you. And so the 4 tiles on it will say, okay, well, on the left side, you have to have a bird. On the right side, you have to have a fence. And if you get both of those symbols present on the correct size of that tile, then you flip that token over and you score some points. Still fine, right? But then there's also these objectives on the adventure book. You flip the page to this different, mini game, and sort of same thing. It says, well, okay, here's a bunch of symbols you have to have present in your meadow, but they might be opposite the direction of the tile you have in front of you. They might be tokens that are completely unrelated. Like, it made this second game that we played of this, which was just last night, very, very, very challenging. It made it very, very frustrating as I needed a particular token on this side. I needed a symbol on this side. I couldn't find one out of the deck. I kept spending actions to try and find this particular, it was a bird symbol, and I just could not find it. I finally, on a last-ditch effort, I got it, and I did score a bunch of points, and I kind of barely won this game. But it was so frustrating to constantly keep going fish into the deck just to find these symbols. Now, I have often wondered if you could play this game, even the base game of Meadow, and completely ignore the campfire board. Just try to get the highest scoring cards in front of you and just play an efficient game. And I don't know. I haven't tried that. And it's very possible that even with these harder versions of this game, you can just ignore it and just sort of play the base game of Meadow and try and score a lot of points. But on the same token, then why is it there, right? So as I've been reading through more and more of these, and I think they're going to get harder and harder through these additional hikes, I don't know if this is really what I want out of Meadow. I feel like it has taken this just beautiful, lovely game, and it is still a beautiful game. The new cards and new art in this is gorgeous, but it has taken what was such a peaceful and relaxing game and made it hard and frustrating and very swingy because, well, I draw a card and the card that comes out is exactly the card that I need, but my wife also needs it, so she takes it, and I'm kind of stuck still, right? And that is really, really frustrating when you are really looking for one symbol that is not that prevalent in the game, and there it went, and you may never get another chance at it. And maybe that's just gaming, but that's not really what I want out of Meadow. So we're going to try and probably get at least one more of these 6 played. I'm going to probably try and tackle the rest solo. This was sent to me as a review copy from Asmodee, so I definitely need to do a video of it. But right now, I'm kind of leaning towards just sticking with the base game. The downstream expansion was also really, really good. I just don't know that an adventure book is the direction that I really wanted Meadow to go in, and I don't really know who would. So that's where I stand on it for right now. More on that hopefully to come soon. Okay, up next. This was a stretch. We played Zengwo. I think it's Zengwo. I Google checked this one. The First Empire. This is from, sorry, we are French. I am terrible at getting box lids and box covers aligned correctly. Anyways, or box backings, whatever. This is a really interesting game, and it took me a little bit to learn this. There were a couple things I was having some troubles with the rules, and I'll tell you, I read so many rule books in the past week, I'm not going to remember any of these games or how to play any of them in the weeks to come. But I did want to check this one out. This was also given to me by the Dice Tower, I think at the retreat, or maybe Dice Tower East is when they gave me this to review. And I've heard some really good stuff about it, and it is a pretty good game. But it's a little difficult to describe here. So you've got basically 2 possible actions on your turn. You get a hand of cards. The whole idea here is that you're sort of living in this era of ancient China. I think it was like 223 BC, where an emperor is sort of trying to unify all of China. He's trying to unify the laws, the currency, and the language of this vast empire. And so you are sort of working as a liaison, a general, I don't really know, trying to sort of assist him in making this happen. And so you get 2 cards of each of these ideas, laws, writings, and currency, and you can either tuck them into your player board in one of, I believe, 5 different regions of China, or you can play them to a separate board to take any action you want. The color of the card, the type of the card doesn't matter. You can take any action you want, but each card has a number on it from 1 to 120. And if you are picking an action on a particular side of this board, then the number of the card that you played has to either be lower or higher than the card underneath it. And then not only can you take any action that you want, but you can trigger any card tucked into your player board that has the symbol of the same action that you took. You're not taking the same action over and over and over again, but you may take an action that says, well, I'm going to install a new governor into this province. And if you have any cards in front of you that show that governor action, there is then a bonus action you can take on the right side of that card, and you can trigger it if you played a lower card number than the one that was already there. And once we figured that out, it made a lot of sense, and we were just working through the game. We just didn't really know what we were trying to accomplish. There are no personal goals. There is a set of public objectives out on the board, and it's to say, okay, well, if you install 2 governors in this province, then you place a token on this and you'll score points. And my wife is very much the kind of player who she likes to kind of have set objectives that she's working towards. And so once we kind of figured out that that's where the objectives are, we were all starting to work towards it. The only thing being was that the game very naturally seems to push you in a direction of, okay, start here in the Chu region and then move to the Y region and whatever. And so I was trying to quickly figure out, where is she going? And I want to go in a different path, because if you score an objective later, you're going to get less points. Pretty typical out of a game like this. And it was good, but it was a struggle. It was a challenge. And there was a little bit of this randomness in that, okay, there's an 83 card out there, and I need to play this 81 card, and I can do that lower, the left side objective, and I can trigger all my bonuses, and my wife goes and plays the 12. Shit! Now my number is on the wrong side, right? And so a couple times I kind of had it playing with, okay, well, if I got to play low, I'll use this card and do this action. If I got to play high, I'll use this card and take this action. But you can't always plan ahead for that. It doesn't always work that well for you. And so it was a little frustrating to just be subject to that randomness of, well, what card is they're going to play, and is it still going to be higher than what I want to be able to play myself? And I wondered, same thing like Meadow, could I just completely ignore this whole tucking thing? Because if you're tucking a card in your board, nothing happens. You don't trigger anything. You get a couple of tokens that are used at the end of each round, maybe give yourself a bonus action, maybe. And that was another weird system that I'm just not going to get into. But when you're tucking that card, there's no action you take at all. And so you're foregoing really an action to be able to do something in the game, to tuck a card to let you instead maybe get to do something later, maybe a couple of times. And I kind of wondered, well, if I just spend this whole game and I just keep spending my cards to that court board and take whatever action I want and don't worry about tucked cards, could I maybe get more done, although I wouldn't be able to trigger off any bonus actions, but then I wouldn't care if I'm playing the low or the high value, right? I can just do whatever I want to do. Other than that, I did enjoy this. It's a neat puzzle. I do wonder how swingy it would be at 4, but the main board flips over and you have a little bit more options for things, so that probably makes it better. But this was fun, and I think we'll try it. I'm thinking Daniel would really, really like this game, and so I've already pitched it to him, and maybe we can get it played a little bit more later on. That was Zhanguo by Sorry We Are French. Up next was Star Trek Expeditions. This was given to me by my friends Katie and, well, not given to me, they picked it up for me at Gen Con last year. This is another Star Trek cooperative game, this time by Reiner Knizia, and this is sort of based on the newer, what's the director's name? I cannot remember. J.J. Abrams, the newer sort of franchise of Star Trek movies that even then ended several years ago. I don't know if they're going to make any more of them, but I was a little nervous going into this. It doesn't really have a high score out on BGG. And I'm not going to go super deep into this one, but it was actually a fairly decent cooperative experience. The rule book was a little tough to get through. We actually got a couple of rounds in before I realized that we were doing something completely wrong. I didn't bother starting over again. I was like, screw it, let's just adjust and keep going. But at the beginning of each player's turn, they reveal a card. Maybe an event happens depending on your difficulty level, either 1 event in easy mode, 2 events in medium mode, and all 3 events in the hard mode. And then you pick one of your 4 characters, or you move one of your characters. And so just like the Project Gaia game, we were each controlling 2 characters. I think I had Kirk and Bones, Dr. McCoy, and she had Uhura and Spock. And on your turn, you get a couple of actions dictated by that card, and you can beam up to the Enterprise and do stuff. You can beam down to this planet, and if you go to an unexplored location on this planet, you flip these big cards over, and it may be a little challenge just for that area, or it may bring out one of these 3 mission cards. You have 3 missions that you have to complete on this planet. And there was this kind of a story about, you're trying to get this planet Nibia to join the Federation of Planets, but the Klingons are there kind of wrecking things up for you, and you've got to try and figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it, and sort of fix this energy/ecology issue happening on the planet and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of decent. There's also these tokens that you can discover, and we found out very quickly that some of the tokens are actually used for some of the missions, or you can discard them for a temporary effect, but then it makes the missions a little harder, and that was kind of neat. The only problem with it is that now we've played it. We finished it. We actually got a fairly high success rate, probably because we goofed the first couple of turns. But there's no different missions. There's no expansions for this. There's no different missions in the box. There's nothing that changes this game up from play to play, except for from some very slight variations on where you put the cards out, and of course how these event cards reveal themselves. There are some mission objectives that you had to get done before a certain round of the game. You get like 29 days to get the game done. If the timer runs out, you lose. But so we did a couple that we were supposed to get done by day 10, and we got them done on day 14. And so you get a slightly lesser outcome out of it, a slightly lower score out of each mission. And then there's also you have step 1 of each mission, and then step 2 has 2 different options, 2A and 2B, based on how well you do in step 1. And then 2B may point you towards 3C or 3D, which again have different options. And so we got 2A on most of the missions except for 1, and I think we got 3A or 3B on the other missions, and so we got the higher scores. But again, if we play this again, we might experience things in a different order, but it will be the same things. We'll still find the same tokens, we'll still find the same missions. It's just a matter of, again, will we get the higher scores or lower scores? And that was just kind of a letdown. And that's what a lot of the comments are saying out on BGG, was that the replayability of this game is almost zilch. There's almost no reason to play it a second time. Also, it is from WizKids, who are notorious for terrible quality components. The cards are paper thin on this. The standees are very nice. The ship standees are very nice. And they got this kind of a click thing. So as you're taking damage or healing or whatever, you're clicking this base up and down to change the attributes, which helps you in missions, helps you in space combat against this Klingon ship. And all that's nice, but everything is so flimsy and thin and just cheap feeling, which is just very notorious for WizKids. Still a decent game. I just wish there was more I could do with it. Star Trek Expeditions. Okay, still going, folks. Couple more left. I'm trying to keep moving. Next up, we played Time Division. This was given to me by the Dice Tower. This game was weird. Really, really weird. It is a card play, kind of a dueling game, very, very abstract, but you're supposed to play across 3 eras. Ancient Egypt, the Dark Ages, and the 1980s. I don't know. But there's 18 cards in the game, and you do this kind of really weird drafting system at the beginning of each era, and you end up with 6 cards. Your opponent has 6 cards, and there's 6 cards in this kind of common, or I can't remember what it's called, but just sort of the side stack, right? And then you both play a card. Whoever has the highest value card in front of them kind of becomes the controller of that round, and they decide if they're going to trigger their card, or if their opponent gets to trigger their card, and then the other card gets scored. So if I trigger my card, I do what it says, but then it goes into the pass or the discard. And the opponent, my wife in this case, will just get to score her card. So let's say I play the 9, she plays a 2. Well, my 9 might give me a decent ability. Maybe I get to go through that common deck and take a card or score that card or just move it to whatever. I trigger my card, I trigger my 9 goes into the past, and she scores her 2, and that's endgame scoring. Or I could let her trigger her 2, and then I get to score my 9. So now I have 9 points, but her 2 might be a pretty powerful ability, even one that lets her steal or trash my 9. And that's what this whole game is Some cards have really, really powerful effects, either that just benefit you or that hurt your opponent. And sometimes you run into that challenge where, well, hey, I want to score my 9, but your 2 is too potent. So I'd rather trigger my 9, which may not even give me that much, but you only score 2 points. But then some of them may say, well, if I activate my 6, then your 4, my 6 lets me steal your 4. And so I take your 4 and my 6 goes away. You get completely hosed. And at least I still netted 4 points. And that was the thing, was that these cards just didn't... The rules even say that sometimes the lower value cards have more powerful actions, but not always. And so we were just struggling. I would play a card, my wife would play a card, and I'm sitting there looking at it going, that was like the worst possible card that you could play, but it's so hard to even figure out what card's going to do what when. And so some of the reviews I was reading online was that there's a player aid in the book, it's just in the rule book, that tells you what every single card does. And my wife actually had to take a picture of it so that she could look and I could use the book, and she had her phone, and so you draft your 3 cards. Okay, 1 goes to your opponent, 1 you keep, 1 goes to that side deck at the beginning of each round. And you gotta sit there and go through each card in the book to figure out, okay, do I want this one? What does this do? Okay, no, I'll take this one, you take that one, I'll put this one aside. Okay, next week, okay, I do this again. And there's so much downtime as you're just lost in the rule book, trying to figure out, well, what is this card going to let me do? How can I use it to my benefit? It was really kind of tedious. I liked the idea of it, but it just didn't really seem to execute in a way that made sense. So we just played a practice round, and then you can play the full 3 eras. You can just do 1 era and just play a quick little mini game, like 15 minutes, maybe longer if you're reading the rulebook the whole time. Or you can do a full game, which is maybe an hour. And we played 2 of the 3 eras, and at the end of the second era, unfortunately, I had just completely scored so many points that my wife literally could not win in the 3rd round unless she played a perfect sweep. And she was like, no, there's no way. Let's just wrap it up. So that was Time Division. I'm going to try and review this for the Dice Tower, but I'm not even sure that I adequately could. Up next, we played Iridanos. I actually played this with my daughter. I gave my wife a little break. Iridanos is a sort of a card-based version of Stratego. Stratego is a 2-player tactical game where you have little plastic figurines in front of you with numbers ranging from, I don't know, maybe 2 to 9 or 1 to 8, whatever it was. And you only get to know, only you know what your number is. So when you move a piece, you can go to attack an enemy and you say, okay, I'm a 7. And they say, well, I'm a 4. Okay, well, my 7 beats your 4 is dead, my 7 stays there. But now your opponent knows what that number is, and if they can remember, maybe they have an 8 right next to it and go, well, then, my 8 beats your 7. And there you go. Now this is sort of the same idea, but you're using cards, and the cards represent ships. And you are sort of pirates duking it out with your opponent to try and capture control of an island. And so same thing, you put 4 cards down as your front lines, you have 4 cards behind the front lines as your reserve, and on your turn you can do one of, I think, 4 actions. You can either attack, where you name one of your cards and you attack one of your opponent's cards. Now you actually flip the card face up and it stays face up. So they don't even have to remember what you have. And each ship has a list of ships that it defeats and ships that defeat it. And so you can, okay, I'm going to fight your card with my 2. Oh, well, that was a 4, so my 2 just died. But you can also, you have mines, and so they say, well, I'm going to attack your mine. Well, my mine blows up your ship, but my mine blows up in the process. So we both lose our card. And then optionally, you can bring one of your reserve cards up to sort of replace something that is missing from your front lines. And if you have conquered any islands at that point in the game, one of your options also is to activate one of your island effects. It's a one-time use for that round. So you kind of turn it to the side and then it triggers an effect. This was really simple. It was fine. I could see it as a nice little pub game. Sort of swingy, sort of random, but a decent sort of thought process behind it. Not a bad game, Iridanos. And I have no idea when I got that, because I have not mentioned it in any episode of the Ratchet. I have no idea when it showed up. Either I forgot to talk about it or I didn't write it down. Who knows? Anyways, up next, it's a few more to go. We played Druids of the Elements. This is from Rio Grande Games. They sent me this as a review copy along with the New Frontiers expansion, which I still need to review. And this one made me laugh because it was, I think, Friday or Saturday night. And my wife goes, well, let's get one more game in. I was like, I have nothing ready. So I came over to here and I saw the box. It was still in shrink. And I thought, well, let me see how, it's a small box. Can't be that hard. It does say 30 to 120 minute game time. So I pulled the shrink off. I looked at the rule book. And the very front page, it says, Druids is an addictive strategy game for 2 to 8 players. Folks have got to stop putting that kind of stuff in their rule books, right? Because we just kept joking the whole game. That's weird. I am not addicted to this at all. This is a very abstract game for 2 to 8 players where you are just trying to score these cards. That's really the whole thing. You have element cards, earth, fire, wind, and water, and then you have these runes cards, which are also sort of associated with the 4 colors of those 4 elements, blue, green, red, and white, right? And you have a druid little meeple, you have a wolf meeple, and in the 2-player game, you have a raven meeple, which is very, very hard to move around intentionally. And you can move these things around the board. There are a couple tiles on, it's a different layout every time you play. The same arrangement of tiles, but organized in any random way. And so some of them will provide you with an element, some of them will provide you with a magic effect that you can trigger, and they just may help you throughout the game. And basically all it is that you can spend these element cards to get gems. Some of the runes cards require you to spend gems to get them scored. Some of them just require you to, you can just play the card almost for free and hopefully you have something in effect by the end of the game to score points. Some of them you can just play and they kind of give everyone a one-time quick little bonus. And then some of them actually require characters on the board to be in a certain arrangement. They have to be sitting on certain tiles. And if you meet the pattern on that card, you can play it, say, hey, everything is in that right shape. You can never do it on your own, so you have to have other players in the right spot, and you can play that card. And that's it. That's the whole thing. You're just trying to play these cards. And then at the end of the game, you can get extra points if you have 3 of the same color in a row, because as you're playing these cards, you have to play them to the right or the left of the current row. So if you get 3 of a color into a row, or in a line, then that's 3 points. If you get 1 of each color in line, that's 3 points. And you can always reuse the end cards. So if you actually had 5 of the same color, that would count as 2 patterns of 3 because you can reuse the middle card. So that would be 6 points out of 5 cards. Not bad. So my wife was playing cards very early in the game. Okay, well, here's an end game card, here's an end game card, here's an end game card. But the game ends fairly quickly for 2 players. That's what the 30 minutes is. And I was just playing cards and play cards. Like, hey, this gives me like a point. I don't even care. But I was going for all those 3-point endgame scoring conditions. And I got a shitload of them. I think my endgame was like, 21 points or something ridiculous like that. And she had a couple color arrangements, but she was trying so hard to satisfy the endgame condition cards that she had played that she wasn't really able to focus on colors. She was going for very, very specific cards. And so her endgame was like maybe 6 points. And I was already ahead of her on the track because of all the cards I had played, that I ended up kind of clobbering her in this game. And again, we just sat there joking like, I'm not addicted to this one bit. My wife goes, she used a line from John Panette, a very hilarious comic who passed away a bunch of years ago. She goes, I'm pretty sure I can quit this cold turkey and then eat the cold turkey. It was really an okay game. And I think that now that she kind of knows that, she could probably play this and do better. A little bit large of a footprint for like a pub game, and probably lighter than something we would normally want to get into. Although, probably pairs pretty well with like Dwarf Romantic as far as complexity. But a decent game. Not a bad game. I enjoyed it more just because things kind of went my way. The cards came out when I needed them, but definitely not addicted to it. Druids of the Elements. The last one, folks, oh my gosh, I've made it, is the Warp. This one I was a little worried about getting into because, as you'll see from some of these pictures, this was a bit of a table hog. And actually, the back of the box makes it look a lot busier than it really was because in the 2-player variant, you only put out 2 of these tiles. Now, the quick thing I will say, and I'm not going to get deep into this game, I just can't, but the rule book was oddly specific in a few areas and incredibly vague in others. There's this idea of you have these tracks on your player board and you're building these buildings and then you can level up the buildings. And your position on the track is equal to the number of buildings multiplied by the level of that building. And it goes on to say that if you have 3 energy plants, power plants out on the board, and your level of that plant is 2, then your position on the track should be position number 6. Because as it says, in parentheses in the rulebook, 3 times 2 equals 6. I don't think he needed to tell us that. I think if I'm buying a game with the word expert on it, I know how to do simple multiplication. But then I got to the setup portion of the book, and it says, well, only 1 board comes out per player. But then it didn't show me how the heck those boards are supposed to get placed. Do they go across from each other on this central tile? And it didn't look like. It looks like you kind of fan them from the left to right. So if you have just 2 boards, you're going to put 2 of them here, 3 of them here, 4 of them here. And if you have all 4, actually it goes up to 6, but you have to have the expansion. So even though this game is set up with rules for 5 or 6 players, you have to have the expansion to even play it at 6. That was a little cheeky, I thought. But anyways, if you've got the 4, then you add this little warp token or a little a wormhole token, whatever, and that kind of is supposed to make the game act like a circle, even though you don't have all the players there. But I couldn't figure that out. Like, I had to kind of infer from text how I was actually supposed to set this up, and yet it's giving me the answers to basic multiplication problems. Anyways, I digress. This is a 4X game, and I would say it is a very genuine 4X game. It has all the systems there. You're getting resources from these. You're sort of expanding on this desolate planet, which has been overrun by exiled species, and there's this whole backstory to this cataclysmic event that happened. It was a pretty neat read. But you're getting resources. You're using those resources to build buildings, to deploy troops. You're sort of leveling up all this stuff, and then you're getting these mission cards. There's a couple common that are out, and then you can also get your own private missions, and you're accomplishing those missions to score points. Those missions may be as simple as get to level 12 on a certain track by having 4 buildings out, research to level 3, because in case you don't know this, 4 times 3 is 12. So if you get to level 12 on this track, so you get to score that card, and it's worth a bunch of points. And all that was great. And it was actually, once we sort of got into it, once we figured out, how multiplication works, we were doing pretty well in the game. I did kind of quickly, my nature in these types of games is that I want to have all my energy plants. I want to, level up all my stuff. I want to be like this super awesome force, until I quickly realized that, hey, look, I have a card that just says control a bunch of territory. I have a card that says have all of your military units out on the board. If I just focus on that stuff, I don't need all the energy plants. I don't need all of the gold mines or whatever. I just need to have all my military out, which isn't really that hard to do. I took a couple of actions. I did actually manage to get my command buildings up to level 12, and that got a goal done. And then I was able to deploy all my troops on a mission, got that goal done, and I conquered the 5th territory, got that goal done. And all of a sudden I went from I think 7 to 14 points in almost a single turn, and you're only supposed to play to 9, and then you're supposed to play 3 more rounds to see who still has the most points at the end of that last round. And I think my wife had 3 or 4 points, and she goes, I'm good, you can have this one. and I wasn't trying to play aggressively. I didn't fight her at all. In fact, I wasn't even quite in a position to do so. And so it's almost kind of like Voidfall in that way. You can fight other players, and I'm sure it's encouraged in some capacity, but you can also just sort of avoid the conflict missions and just go for your prosperity or your expansion, whatever. I like this, and like I said, I wasn't trying to play aggressively. I was really just kind of it's supposed to be a longer game. It says 2 to 3 hours to play, and I actually think even with the teach, we had it done in about 2. And I think that if I knew how to play the game going in, and we were all kind of on the same page as far as just familiarity with the game, you could probably knock this out in an hour or so if you're just focusing on those missions. If you want to try and build this huge empire and then go big, you can, but you might get beaten out by someone who's just playing very efficiently and just focusing on those goals. So I actually really, really like this. Again, this is from the Dice Tower. I think there's some good potential to this. I'm not going to bother with the 5 or 6 player expansion, but this was decent. This was actually quite decent. I think it's got a 3.5 in complexity on Board Game Geek, and it does have a fairly high score, but it's also not very well known. I think it's pretty neat. The Warp. And, folks, that's it. I got through it, because the last game we played last night was Meadow Adventure Book, and I already talked about that one. Question for next week, and I didn't write it down. What was I going to ask folks? Where is it? This is so embarrassing. I did write it down. Okay, so the question of the week for next week is how, or I should say, do you, and how diligently do you track your gameplay? So, I use Board Game Geek and I just kind of track the games I've played, but I know folks who keep a log. My friends Katie and Greg, actually it's pretty much all Katie, but she tracks all of her gameplays in a notebook and writes everything down and who played and what the scores were. I don't necessarily get into scores. I do try to mention who I played with and where. But there's BG stats. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And I'm just curious, do you use any of that? Do you track your games at all? Do you not worry about it? And then again, like how diligently do you do so? Are you keeping track of names and scores and all that kind of stuff? Some people even keep track of who played what color. I don't do that myself, but I'm just curious, do you do any kind of tracking of your played games? And that is it for the first episode of 2025. We're almost up to a year of the Weekly Ratchet, and I'm hoping to do some cool stuff as that gets a little closer. Otherwise, for now, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll chat with you folks soon. Cheers.